up on us with ultimate female force. My beautiful wife had 3 children one day after she even looked at a bottle of female force. But let me tell you, as Tuck Buckford knows, my cousin, and as I know as well, we came up with the ultimate known herbal formula for your little lady friend. Popeye turns into a badass when he eats spinach. My little lady turns into Godzilla when she takes it. So remember, you can get your ultimate female force today at InfoWarsLife.com or InfoWarsStore.com and tell the mainstream media they can go straight to hell as you fund the First Amendment and unlock the incredible dynamo that is your little lady friend. Whoa! I love it!
Welcome to the InfoWar. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, guys. Wrong show. Welcome to NeoUnrealist. I hope you'll forgive me if this story makes me feel as if this is an InfoWars broadcast when I tell you that the New York Times, yes, that leftist rag that the establishment regards as the paper of record, had this headline yesterday: Jeffrey Epstein hoped to seed human race with his DNA. Yeah, that's a New York Times headline. I mean, before you go thinking that this was just some weird Epstein idea that he had one day, no. Epstein subscribed to a set of ideas known as transhumanism. It's the science of improving humanity through genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. But Epstein used his money and his connections to gain access to some of the world's leading scientists. The Times reports that Epstein cultivated relationships with Nobel Prize-winning physicist Murray Gell-Mann. He's the guy that, or is it just Gell-Mann? The guy who discovered the smallest subatomic particle that we know about, quarks. Or a theoretical physicist, you know about him, Stephen Hawking. How about the paleontologist and evolutionary biologist, Stephen Jay Gould? Neurologist Oliver Sacks. George Church, he's a molecular engineer. He works on identifying genes that can be edited to make better people, basically. And you got MIT physicist and Nobel laureate Frank Wilczek. So Epstein would lure these big scientific figures, guys like that, with the prospect of, what do you think? Money, funding. You want to, hey, this guy might fund my project. And if they had to overlook his, shall we say, eccentric tastes in young ladies, or legitimize some of his more off-the-wall scientific ideas, well, got to get that paper. Work has to go on, right? I mean, it's a little bit scary how devious this Epstein guy was. It was almost, as you read this, it's almost like he was grooming these scientists the way he was, in a different way than he was grooming his teen victims. He'd throw lavish, wine-soaked parties at his mansion in Manhattan. The Times says that he'd host buffet lunches at the Harvard program for evolutionary dynamics, which, guess who helped start the Harvard program for evolutionary dynamics in the first place? It was Epstein. Gave him $6.5 million he donated to Harvard to start that. And of course, he had other of these scientists and businessmen and advisors flown to conferences that he would sponsor. And yes, you guessed it, the U.S. Virgin Islands, where he'd host them on his private island. The Times reports that he even chartered a submarine and had the scientists taken on board, including, and don't ask me how they managed this, including Stephen Hawking. I mean, how the hell do you even get Stephen Hawking into a submarine? Now, you may have heard of this guy. This is Steven Pinker. I think he's part of the IDW, the Intellectual Dark Web. He's a cognitive psychologist with Harvard University. He's a guy you see on YouTube quite a bit. He said colleagues of his, like Harvard math and biology professor Martin Nowak and theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss. Didn't he have some hashtag #MeToo problems recently? Anyway, people like Lawrence Krauss, they invited him to what he calls salons and coffee clatches with Epstein. And this Pinker says, that these other scientists and these academics at these little coffee clatches, they would fawn over Epstein like sycophants, calling him brilliant and his, just extolling his ideas. And Pinker just says this guy was a fraud. I mean, he said He said Epstein would just make stuff up, change the subject a lot, that he was really just an academic poser. That the projects that he would fund, a lot of them were, of dubious scientific validity. But, the upshot of all this is that Epstein's, big idea, the one he shared with many of these scientists, since going back to the early 2000s, was his desire to use a ranch that he owns in New Mexico as some kind of base where women would go to be inseminated with his sperm and give birth to his babies. The New York Times cites two, award-winning scientists, an advisor and also an advisor to large companies and wealthy individuals, as their sources for this. And they claim this was not a secret in those circles. It's claimed that Epstein's idea and what he told people what he wanted to do was to have 20 women at a time impregnated at the Zorro Ranch outside Santa Fe, New Mexico that he owns. They say that Epstein got this idea from what he heard about. It's just an operation that shut down in 1999. The Repository for Germinal Choice. That was a sperm bank that was going to be stocked with donated material from Nobel laureates who wanted to strengthen the human gene pool. Well, one thing led to another. Only one guy actually donated. It just never amounted to much. But one of the pioneers of virtual reality, a guy named Jaron, is it Lanier or Lanier? I think it's Lanier. He told the New York Times that it's his belief that Epstein was using his fancy dinner parties and his conferences to screen attractive women with impressive academic credentials as candidates to have his children. I mean, just picture this Epstein wanting to run an operation where 20 women at a time would go to the Zorro Ranch to get inseminated. And note it doesn't say artificial insemination. I mean, so one could be forgiven for asking, did he maybe plan to do things the old-fashioned way, au natural himself with these women? And then I guess when the 20 women were all seated, he'd move them out and start assembling a new group of 20 to repeat the process over and over until, who knows how many he thought he needed to do to make an impact on the gene pool. And if all this isn't enough of an ick factor for you, Epstein was also interested in cryonics, the science of freezing people and reviving them at a later date. Apparently he wanted to... this stuff is unreal. Except you have to realize that Epstein had the money and the connections for people to take, some of these ideas seriously. Anyway, apart from the period interest in all things Epstein, why am I even talking about all this? It's because the New York Times and many mainstream media outlets, they're now on the record printing a story that you would have expected to hear from Alex Jones. Alex Jones, who, has been virtually banned off of all major social media for trafficking in conspiracy theories. Was Epstein a conspiracy theory? This stuff that I'm talking to you today about, it's even wilder than some of the stuff that Alex Jones used to say about him. I mean, who decides what a conspiracy theory is? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to take what Alex Jones says on his InfoWars program as legitimate. I'm always very skeptical of anything Alex Jones has to say until I verify it with other sources. Well, that's my point. He should still have a voice, just the same as the New York Times or CNN or YouTube, Facebook or whatever. If he reports a story and it's crap, well, that's up to the viewers to decide, not the social media giants. But, now with this story on Epstein, I guess now everyone is in Alex Jones' InfoWar now. Right? Right, New York Times? That's all for this NeoUnrealist. If you want to help the channel out, like this video, comment below, and hit the subscribe button if you're not already. Click on the notification bell and set it to all to keep up with the newer content. If you want to support the channel directly via Subscribestar, PayPal, Patreon, or the BitChute to pledge button, follow the links below to one of those. Now, that said, the fact that you're still around to hear this after a rambling narration of Jeffrey Epstein's bizarre fantasies, to seed humanity, that's another step toward the Die Hard achievement. Thanks for watching.